Hello, everybody. This is Caroline. Welcome to the Ideas by Interpreters episode number 7. We're going to start in about 5 minutes, just waiting for more people to trickle in. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. If you are just getting here, welcome to the Ideas by Interpreters episode number 7. Today we are joined by Darouny Samsonith, and she's going to be talking to us about the local healthcare interpreter program, HCI, at the City College here in San Francisco, which is where Boostlingo is located. We're currently partnering with HCI and working with Darouny to actually get some of their students doing some video remote interpreting on our platform. So, Darouny, if you want to just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Caroline. Hello, everyone. My name's Darouny Samsonith, and I am the coordinator for the Healthcare Interpreter Certificate Program at City College of San Francisco. And so I'm happy to be here today and to talk to you a little bit more, and to let you know a little bit more about our program.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to hear more about it. You know, this is the kind of thing that a lot of our interpreters, of course, are all over the world, right? So, but it's always interesting to hear how interpreters are trained in different places and kind of compare with our own or with other things we're familiar with. So that said, let's get started here. First of all, if we could get a kind of basic overview of what the program is about and what it's designed for, what kind of preparation the interpreters go through for this
Sure.
certificate.
So our program has been around now for 21 years, and it was actually the brainchild of a nurse at Kaiser Permanente in San Francisco. Her name's Gail Tang, and she eventually she was a nurse at the time at Kaiser, and she speaks Cantonese. And then she realized that when she was doing her work, that just the need for trained interpreters and how basically isolated patients were if they did not speak English well. And so she eventually became a supervisor of her nursing unit, and eventually became, I guess, the national director for cultural and diversity training at Kaiser Permanente. And so she approached um, the college at the time, and I think it was 1997, 98, and she said, you know, there's a need, and I would like to create this program. And so from and having that she was at Kaiser Permanente and being in the position that she was, and so the college was able to create that partnership. And so from that, you know, she came up with, and others that work with her came up with a curriculum, a training manual, which is still readily available, and we share openly with anyone and anyone that asks us. We share openly with people. But the idea was, the program is meant to train bilingual and bicultural students to really be linguistically and culturally competent interpreters who will function effectively and efficiently in healthcare settings. So it's not just, you know, someone who's bilingual doesn't necessarily make them a good interpreter. They have to have the skills, and they also have to have a greater awareness of what it means to be an interpreter. And so,
Right.
yeah.
So, sorry, just to interject here. I know a lot of our interpreters are not U.S. based, so I wanted to just
Right. Okay.
clarify. You know, Kaiser Permanente, it's an American Integrated Managed Care Consortium, and they're based in California here. And I just wanted to kind of bring that up in case somebody was wondering.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're a health management organization, and they're a big hospital here in California, as well as other. I think they're in other states in the
Yeah.
throughout the country as well. So from there, we also, you know, obviously we have a strong academic piece because we're located in a college. And then we partner that with, we hire trained interpreters to be language lab coaches, which is very different than other programs. And then in their and at the end of their education, they have an internship component where they go out and practice the skills learned in language lab and lecture at the college, and then, you know, to build their kind of skills at the hospital. And that's how we came to meet you, Carolyn, and Boostlingo, was trying to figure out how to provide more opportunities for internship for our students. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
It's interesting. I mean, a lot of what we're finding, obviously, in the interpreting industry is a lot of moving towards more remote interpreting versus on-site. Not that on-site is going away at all, but this is just another example of how we can kind of make the technology available to interpreters.
right. And we obviously, in the 21 years we've been around, the majority of our students have, our partnerships have been with mainly hospitals because
Hmm.
that's where the trained interpreters are. However, we find that, as the industry is changing, and on top of that, we also want to train interpreters for other languages other than Spanish, Cantonese, or Mandarin, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on in terms of like the series of our languages. But in any of, so in our curriculum, we do very much look to the California Healthcare Interpreter Association as well as the National Standards of Practice in our instruction. So by the time the students finish our program, which is a 2-semester program currently, so if you get into our program, it's 2 semesters, meaning it's roughly 10 to 11 months long. And so within that, we look at those standards, and by the time the students finish, they would have had acquired about 350 to almost 400 hours of training by the time they finish our program.
Wow,
And
yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing. I mean, a lot of programs are not as rigorous, and so having met the interpreters that are doing some interning with on our platform, you can definitely tell that the type of training they've gone through is very valuable.
yeah. Well, I mean, it takes it. Um, we do have a screening process so that we can make sure that the students who enter our program are ready to be interpreters. As I mentioned before, someone who's bilingual doesn't necessarily mean that they will make a good interpreter.
Right, right.
And there are different degrees of bilingualness. I would say.
Hmm.
So we do have um, an introductory class, which I'll talk about in terms of how we screen students to get into our program.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Um, so those are kind of some really interesting basics on the program. But I kind of wanted to, before we go forward on the details, have Darouny speak a little bit about her role and kind of how she got into this industry, because it's always a really fascinating story, in my opinion, to see how people get into this very unique industry.
So for me, I came through this industry because, well, obviously, I came to the United States as a refugee when I was a young child with my parents from Laos. So we came here, and just like many people who are bilingual, they are ad hoc interpreters for their family members. So I remember fully that. I had to interpret for my grandmother and my mom, and still to this day, I still interpret for my mom. However, when I went through school, my interest was in community health. I love working with community. I love working within the realm of public health. So, and however, my bachelor degree was in science because I really love science as well, and biology. And then once I finished my undergraduate, I went on and got a public health degree because I really wanted to use my love of health with helping the community. And so I became a community health worker at a community health center, which is a community clinic, working a lot with immigrant communities, Asian as well as Hispanic, Latinos, in the Bay Area. And I worked a lot on just health education stuff, from HIV to diabetes to smoking cessation to issues with youth to men's health and dental health. And then eventually I also worked on policy around expanding healthcare and also working on bringing more recognition to the role that community health workers play in the healthcare system. And so from there, I somehow found my way towards the college. They approached me and asked me if I would want to teach a class, and I started teaching, and I find that I really love it. And in all of my life, I never thought I would be a teacher. Never, never, never. But given the opportunity, I really love and it's another way to work with community, you know,
Right, right.
and I love it. And then the person who came, and was the coordinator before me, she was going to go on sabbatical, and then she said, oh, can you step in and coordinate this program, this healthcare interpreter program? And and lo and behold, she then, so now I've been coordinating it for 3 years, and I've
Okay,
taught
wow.
with this program now for 5 years. So and that's how it came to be that I am in this position.
That's a really interesting, cool story. Seems like you've had, contact with lots of different kind of facets of society. So and I totally agree with the connection to the community. That's something that I really value as well. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
I'm going to move on to the next topic. We're going to dive in deeper to the program, just talk a bit about the curriculum and kind of um, see how these skills translate to the interpretation field, in healthcare settings specifically.
Right. The first part, I've already mentioned that in our earlier statement in terms of the mission of the program, but how we achieve that mission is by really exploring in class and in lab the roles and responsibilities of healthcare interpreters. Um, having been a community health worker and being bilingual, I know that there is, and a lot of people approach interpreting through a community health worker viewpoint because that's how they got into the work. But when you look at the roles and responsibility of healthcare interpreter, they're slightly different than a community health worker. And so we do look at that in class. And then we also do a lot of, you know, uh, teaching, lecture, discussion around just basic knowledge of common medical conditions. And I can't tell you enough how many interested students come into the program that have very, very little healthcare knowledge.
Right.
And so that's not to say they can't be good interpreters, but it does definitely take time to learn that material. And as a program, we want to make sure that those who come in without that knowledge, that we give them that baseline knowledge. Because how can you be in a medical encounter and talking about diabetes or hypertension or even cancer when you don't even know the context of how that came to be, that health condition came to be. And so we do spend a lot of time. And in the first semester, we probably explore about 10 health conditions. And then in the second semester, I hand the students off to Gail Tang, who again was the creator of the program, and she's
Okay.
still
Wow.
in the program. And then she goes deeper into other topics like death and dying,
Hmm.
LGBTQ issues, to talking about behavioral health. So much more deeper and complex health care issues and health knowledge. And also she talks also more, she expands on the students' understanding of looking at professional ethics around all the complex issues that come from dealing and helping patients and their family around those issues. And then, moving that to, we also talk a lot about, cultural nuances and how that plays out in a medical encounter. What does that, so people come with different, patients come with different healthcare experiences from other parts of the world. And when they come to the US, they have expectations of how they want that medical visit to go. And
Right.
as a healthcare interpreter, you're the person in the middle. You're the one that has to be able to connect patient and provider, and you need to be able to have a strong knowledge of a strong cultural knowledge on both sides and be able to help people bridge that cultural gap. And so we spend a lot of time on that. And then obviously we also do a lot on interpreting skills, just in general, in both English and their language of service, which is their native language for most people. And we do a lot of that in language lab. Again, we you know we hire healthcare interpreters to be our coaches, and most of our coaches are our graduates, and so they know the rigors of the program, and they are seasoned interpreters, and so they're able to really work with our students on medical terminology in the other language. Also talking about the cultural nuances of a medical visit in the other language. So all of that, all of these 4 points help build our program, and we look to these 4 points when we um, change our curriculum or when we modify our curriculum in any way, because we want to support these 4 points for sure in our program.
It's almost like a mission statement in a way. You kind of
Yes.
stick to
Mhm.
it no matter what because there's always trends and changes in the industry itself, of course, but
Of course.
it's
And
important
we
to
always tell
remember
our
those.
students at the end of the day, the idea is we're training them so that they don't do harm.
Right.
you know
Yes.
and there's so that's our mission is we want to make sure that we provide good interpreters so they can best serve their clients and best allow them to get the best health care possible.
Right, and I'm sure with your background and influence on the program, it has a lot to do with how the community can be helped at large. So that's really interesting. Um, and it's a really important perspective to have. Let's, yeah. So anything else you wanted to touch on here in the curriculum? You went into detail on the labs. I thought that was interesting. Just how you know, alumni will come back and give their feedback and also help the newer students get into the industry. That's
Right.
pretty
So,
cool.
yes, we have alumni, and we do also, I guess, when we talk, so we teach and train healthcare interpreters. But the other piece of that is we also train people to be coaches once they have gotten their, interpreting certificate. And sometimes interpreters that come from somewhere else sometimes will come to take that class, and that's a 2-day class.
Okay.
We don't have it often, like we usually have it every year or so, and it's just basically training seasoned professional interpreters to basically be able to be a mentor to up and coming interpreters. So
Okay. And this
that.
is like, sorry, this is part of this is like a job that they can do, or
Well,
it's
this
part of
is
it.
yeah, it's a secondary training after they finish our program, should they
Gotcha.
want to. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. Um, so let's go to the next topic, which is one. Some of the admission requirements. I won't ask you to go into detail too much on like the recommended courses because obviously those are going to depend
Right.
depend on where they are, etc. But in terms of proficiency in English, how do you what are the ways and maybe you could talk about the introductory course in which
Right.
you manage that.
So when I came to the program about 5 years ago, we used to have an orientation, one night every semester where we orient people on the program and people come and see if they're interested in the program. And traditionally, we used to have like 150 people that would just show up, and we wouldn't, so we had to figure out a way how to manage
Yeah, that's a
um,
lot.
the interested students. And so we created this half unit class. So this half unit class, which is an introductory course, is not part of our 2 semester program. So this is just a class that is a pass, no pass, where people who are interested can come in, learn about the program. It's a 1 day type of class. And at the end of that 1 day, we will arrange for our language coaches to actually speak with the interested student.
Okay.
And they're the ones that really do an initial evaluation of both the potential students' English and their language of service. And we, not only do we talk to them, but we also have them do maybe sight translation, ask them a little bit about the passage that they've read, and maybe allow them to interpret a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
to see their ability to understand just basic medical terminology, to hear people's accents. Accents are not bad, but at the same time, if it's too thick, then obviously maybe that person needs to work a little bit more on their English.
Right.
And the other end is, an example is someone who speaks Cantonese and Mandarin. A lot of times some students will say, well, I speak both equally. In our experience, the majority of students are stronger in one language than the other. And so sometimes students will try to filter one language because they're more dominant in the other. So it allows us to really hear the students in person. And from there, so after this 1 day class, then they get an application to the program. And then they turn in an application to me, and then we make our decision in terms of who to invite to be part of the program. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously we do recommend students take some of these courses, as I said, because we want them to have a little bit background on medical terminology, if possible, as well as just physiology and anatomy, but that's not to say that we have not picked students to be in a program that has had that's not had any of these experience. We just find that students who have some experience tend to do better in our program.
Yeah,
Uh,
that makes sense.
yeah. And so that's pretty much so the first step for the student in any one interested in our program would be to take our introductory course so that we can then get to assess their language. Now, the other thing is obviously we can't train every language under the sun. Um, this introductory course is also a way for me to get a gauge in terms of how do we expand the language that we do offer. So an example is we've been getting a lot of requests for Burmese and as well as maybe Tigrinya. And we traditionally don't offer those languages. And in order for us to offer any specific language, we do have to have a minimum of 5 qualified students. And obviously, for languages of what we call lesser diffusion, it takes a while in order to get that cohort, to get that group together. Because not only do we need to find someone that's interested in the program and able to go into the program, but they must also have the linguistic ability to be, an interpreter. So I tell students that sometimes even if we don't offer that language right away, attending our introductory class allows me to know who's interested. Because if they don't ever attend the program and let me know that they're interested, we will never offer the program. So it's a way for, yeah, it does. So this introductory course does many things, not just only screen the students that are going to come in and that we have language coach for, but also allows me as a coordinator to know what new languages I need to plan for.
Right. And we had a webinar recently with the director of CCHI,
Hmm.
and she was saying something similar, just how they wish they could offer certification in more diffuse languages, but the only way to really prove that there's a need or that there's a demand for that is for interpreters themselves to come forward and request it. So I
Right.
guess it's sort of a similar process here.
Exactly.
So actually, since we're kind of halfway here, there's a few questions I wanted to go over that people have brought up.
Mhm.
just because they're sort of, related to the topic we're going over right now. Are you familiar, Darouny, with the 40-hour program offered, Bridging the Gap?
I have heard of it and I've read on it. So yes, I know about it, but
Okay.
I
Yeah.
honestly don't know all the finite details of it.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think this topic is coming up just because we had sent out an email to our interpreters yesterday, explaining that they needed to provide documentation that they've
Mhm.
had some sort of training similar to Bridging the Gap or equivalent.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought maybe we could go over how, this obviously this program is a lot more rigorous than just a 40-hour training.
Mhm.
Um, that said, it's something that's just offered at the moment in San Francisco.
Mhm.
So so yeah, and I know we had spoken a little bit about how eventually we were kind of trying to move towards doing things online. Where do you see that the course kind of going, now that things are continuing to be more and more online?
And so part of that, I think, the struggle for, I guess, the program and the college is how do we also find um, instructors?
Hmm.
So coming from a college institution, it's harder to do that because we actually, in order to teach within our department, you have to have a specific degree, and and it's all regulated by the state of California and the community college district. So that has been a struggle for us. And so not only do we need trained individuals that can work as instructors, but also then we also then need to train the instructors to be able to provide the instruction online.
Right.
And as new technology become more available and as it becomes more accessible and easier to navigate, I can see potentially that we can move some of our courses, I mean at least a portion of our course, to be what we call hybrid, so half online, half in person. And it is something that every semester I get requests for. Like students are like, I'm in Sacramento, which is 90 miles away from you. How do I access your program? Or some students are in another state, like people from Texas and from the
Hmm.
East Coast contact me. And then in addition, I've also have interest from people who are internationally, like either Mexico or even Colombia, and so we're trying to figure out how that can be, because obviously for our program, it we one of the best part about it is the fact that we are able to have trained interpreters in the language lab doing that, working one-on-one with our students. And so I guess we hopefully we will create a system whereby there's an opportunity to have enough funding so that we
Hmm.
can hire enough coaches so that we can offer that one-on-one experience, um, as like the language lab. And then another instructor can then be doing the kind of like the biomedical and as well as ethical theory stuff online. Um, so it's I can see us moving towards that, and I just don't know how long it will get there, but certainly I do know there is a strong interest for us to do that. But I think in the next, I want to say 2 years, we might potentially take one of the classes and make it a hybrid, meaning like half online, half in person, so we can work through the issues as we move towards a more I guess, virtual curriculum.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it seems like a lot of things are just moving more virtual in general. So, but that said, I mean, these kind of programs are incredibly valuable to have, in person too. So I don't want to take away from that, but um, it's always a struggle, in terms of getting things expanded and funding and all of that good stuff.
Right.
Um, I have a couple more questions, just if you don't mind,
Sure.
um, before we move on. I have, an interpreter here who's actually local. She is a Tagalog Filipino English pair, and I was kind of curious. I couldn't remember if you had said that that was a language you guys were considering,
So
or.
yes, so traditionally we've never had Tagalog as a language, and so I've been in I've been a coordinator for 3 years, and however, we are seeing more interest in the Tagalog language, and I do know that the local hospital, San Francisco General, is looking to hire a part-time interpreter in Tagalog.
Hmm.
So, so this past summer, actually, the Filipino Studies department at the college contacted me, wanting to see if there's a potential to have Tagalog as a language. So, and I did reach out to them and said, one of the issues is we need to be able to outreach to potential students, because again, we need to have a minimum of 5 qualified students in order to consider that language.
Right.
And so if she or this particular, or she or he, this particular person who's local, if they're interested, I would highly recommend they take Health 84 so that we have a cohort going. Because so just in general, we can't talk about everything unless we talk about the budget, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and because because the program hire interpreters to be language coaches, as we as a program we have to look to see, well, what are the how many students do we have in each language? And so we currently train or have trained in the past up to 10 language, and we have the capability to have 10 different languages. And usually I do rotate between probably 5 or 6. So we offer Spanish every semester, meaning spring and fall we accept Spanish students. We accept new Cantonese students in the fall semester, and they'll finish in the spring semester, which is in May. And in the spring semester, we accept new Mandarin students. Now, the third language, so usually I have at least three, from 3 to 4 languages every semester that starts. The third language is dependent upon the number of students that I have qualified ready to go. So currently, we are finishing up Arabic students. Um, and this semester, we started, I was able to have 4 languages instead of 3. And so we started Japanese and Vietnamese. And then I know what's coming up is we also usually have interest for Russian, as well as Russian, and then I forgot Korean is the other one that we have the
Mm-hmm.
capacity. So, with the limitations of the budget, we need enough students in order to consider that. And then the other issue is we are also considering Mongolian, Burmese, and Tigrinya right now. So for
Okay.
Tagalog,
Yeah.
we are definitely open to having it. That's the short answer, but
Yeah. No,
we
it
need
seems
enough
like.
students in order to have it. That's
Right.
the
It
short
seems just kind of.
answer, the long way to get to that answer.
And you know what? And this interpreter, I'll give her your contact info so you can maybe discuss with her further. But um, anyways, let's continue on. Running out of time. So sorry, my computer's being funky and not going to the next slide. Okay. So this is kind of an obvious answer, but I'm sure it has different gradiencies. What do healthcare interpreters do after they graduate, typically?
So most healthcare interpreters first have to work as freelance interpreters. Whether it's in a community health center setting, whether it's in a contractor through a language service company, or some interpreters do eventually get work as what's called community health workers, actually. So they become a dual staff, meaning their role is to perform another function in addition to being an interpreter. And sometimes those individuals are called bilingual staff.
Okay.
But we know interpreters are, the demand for interpreters are on the rise, and definitely more private companies are, wanting to hire interpreters. Might not be for healthcare, but maybe for something else. We know that also, a lot the interpreters are needed in the school settings as well. And then some interpreters, some of our students have eventually gone on and also opened their own small businesses as language service companies too. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
variety of way, and for freelancer, we say you do have to work as a freelancer first to get the minimum hours to qualify to apply for, let's say, an opening at a hospital like Kaiser or Stanford or even Highland Hospital. Part of that is because usually through HR they require you to have a minimum number of experience, and
Mm-hmm.
how new students who have never worked in interpreting before, how they get those hours is by being a freelancer for a language service company.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like building a portfolio in a way. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So I mean, I love the different ways you can use those skills, and the idea of having more than one kind of duty is also really really cool if you're a
And we are
healthcare.
seeing even in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are seeing even through the public health department. Public health departments do they have a variety of programs that serve community members from mental health to, like I said, diabetes, obesity, education, everything.
Hmm.
And they're
And
now requesting that those individuals who apply to those public health programs be bilingual. So it's a strong demand, definitely,
yeah,
for those.
I mean, I came from social work too, so I saw that as well in the
Mhm.
city social work programs. A lot of the requirements are always that you speak a second language.
Right.
Um,
So that you can better serve your
your
patients.
community,
You
yeah,
come from the
definitely.
community, you understand some of the complexities, issues that are going on in that community. You're better able to address or help your clients connect to what they need.
Yeah, and they trust you more too if you
Exactly.
you speak their language. Um, okay, so main program benefits. I know we went over a lot of this. Is there anything you wanted to touch on in specific or in particular, um, in terms of the program benefits? I know it's pretty self-explanatory, but
No, I mean, I'm blessed to have inherited this program. Obviously it was a lot of hard work for for Gail Tang, as well as the person before me, Nora Goodfriend Coven, who was the coordinator for 15 years of the program. And so we definitely do get a lot of interest from hospitals, and obviously because we have partnerships with hospital for internship. Some of those hospitals look for us to us in terms of like, hey, what which so usually at the end of May we have a job fair, and we invite language service companies, and then usually our students who do an internship at a specific site, obviously those sites are able to see the quality of the interpreters they're getting, and some students do also get job offers through those internship sites. Although, as a program, we always say we don't guarantee employment.
right,
However,
yeah.
I would say, once you finish the program, if you do want to work, usually there's an opportunity to do so, particularly through as a freelancer.
Right. And I mean, Boostlingo, obviously, we don't employ interpreters, but we have connections to language companies that are always in search of interpreters. So that's kind of, a really cool way that we're in being able to partner with this local program. Um,
Right.
let's see. Okay, it looks like we're coming to the end of the presentation here. Obviously, we will send this out to all of our participants. That includes anybody who's registered. So if they're not here in person, they'll also get this information. And I'll also send out, Darouny, if it's okay with you,
Sure.
your contact information just so people can get in touch with you. And
Sure.
then, yeah, let me see what's up next real quick. It's just our last slide, just talking about the next webinar, which is going to be December 11th. We're going to be talking to another local association, an entity, the NCTA, Northern California Translators Association. Their vice president, Judith Marin, is going to speak to us about some interesting topics. It's going to be a series of 3, actually. So the first one is how to build a successful career as a freelance interpreter, which is kind of perfect, going off of this training program. How after we're trained, how do we build our career? So yeah, if I wanted to just look through the questions from our interpreters here or from our participants, see if there's anything else. But I don't see anything else that they maybe should be asking you via email. So I think that's it. If unless you wanted to go into anything else about the program, Darouny.
Well, thank you for having me before
Yeah,
I
no,
forget
thank
to say
you. I
that. So
appreciate
thank
it.
you. So for me, I have to say that it's been a joy to see how people who can use their, language skills and their cultural knowledge to help other people. Um, and so my personal goal as a coordinator is I really want to build um, more competent interpreting for other languages. So we are definitely looking for, so going back to that interpreter who speaks Tagalog, we are looking to expand our program to train other languages. So for those who know of those who speak Burmese, Mongolian, Farsi, even, I know Dari is in demand, as well as Pashto. So,
Hmm.
I just want to say, we are open to having those languages. So, if you know of anyone, feel free to give them my contact information and have them come to Health 84.
Okay,
Enroll in
great.
84 ideally. So that's my pitch.
Okay, perfect. No, that's definitely great information and a great reminder too to just if your language is one of lesser diffusion, that doesn't mean that it's not something that these kind of programs want to focus on. It just means that they have to get enough demand for it. And we're all working towards that in this industry. Um, so there's hope. So yeah, just want to say thank you again, Darouni, for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And we're really excited to keep working with you guys in the future.
Okay, thank you. Me too.
All right,
Have a good
bye.
day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.